Princeton Futures, an organization of residents of Princeton Borough and Township with diverse backgrounds, interests, and talents, have grown out of a concern that much of the planning and proposed development of the critical downtown spaces have been proceeding in an unconnected manner. Princeton Future's aim is to assist the municipal authorities in taking a forward-looking and more comprehensive approach. It needs to be an approach that takes into account the social, cultural, economical, and architectural factors involved as part of an integrated whole. In summary, Princeton Futures seeks to encourage and help bring about the development of relatively little open space in Princeton's downtown. Investigation and consultation undertaken by Princeton Future indicates that these objectives are achievable with good planning. More detailed studies and further involvement of all concerned parties are, however, clearly called for.
It's the other way.
Welcome to our first Witherspoon Street Corridor Study meeting. This meeting is meant to be a town meeting. And we welcome all of you, and we're glad we have so many here so early on a beautiful Saturday morning. Dinah?
Well, on all of your chairs, each of you should have a questionnaire, sort of a form that we're going to use to start the discussion. We'd like everyone in the process of introducing themselves as we go around the circle to begin to answer the first three questions. We don't want this to go too long, just be brief. But what we'd like to know is before coming to the library today, that being probably the common experience of all of us in terms of most recent interaction with Witherspoon Street, what was your most recent use of or experience on Witherspoon Street? What aspects of that experience did you recall most vividly? What did it kick into your senses? And so where did it rank in the spectrum of positive and negative? And then we're going to go into a whole series of discussions about the map, the place, the activities, the things in the present, the future, and also context to the past about Witherspoon Street.
Let me just add one thing. I made a series of quick notes every time I thought of something about what we want to try to do. So those include, we are an independent civic citizens group looking for the way the neighborhood wishes to proceed. I think that's very important. So that's why we begin with a meeting. We begin with a series of data maps on the wall that eventually in the series of our process hope to include ideas that will lead to the conservation, improvement, and generation of appropriate development that comes out of these meetings. So we see this as a programming meeting. So we want to get people talking and thinking. We want to try then through the process to focus our interest, intelligence, and energy on creating a viable street and interesting place. And Bob Getty said when he was being interviewed for the event that's going to follow this one at the university in honor of his tenureship as dean at the School of Architecture at the university, that what we're looking for is a proposal to put the pieces together. On the one hand, we have a regional planning group, and we have a regional master plan. On the other, we have groups that are looking with great energy and intelligence on specific issues and sites along the street, including, of course, the hospital task force. which has been working very hard. What we're going to try to do, I think, comes directly out of Bob Getty's a proposal to put the pieces together. We're dealing with the neighborhood, which is smaller than the regional plan and larger than any particular site. So if your comments today can help us with that, that would be a way of focusing.
Before we get started on introducing ourselves to one another, the process is also one that is 6 months in duration. We're looking at this obviously as the first kickoff meeting, a broad community participation. There will be 3 meetings in December that will look very distinctly at the sections of Witherspoon Street. And we'll move into a phase of analysis, reconvene with the community in the neighborhood to discuss the potential for Witherspoon Street, given both activity that's current, that may be planned, and how we determine the street should continue in its life and service to Princeton. What we want to do today is introduce that whole process. We begin today in November. I think if you saw the schedule, we conclude in the middle of May. We hope to have input not only of the general community and neighbors that are very close to perhaps situated sites and sections of the street, but also the advisory level and counsel from both community members who provide particular expertise and or interests, so that those would need more meetings outside of the scheduled meeting, as well as the groups and or appointed bodies by both Princeton Borough and Township, including Shade Tree, Environmental, Historic, Conservation. Michael mentioned the Healthcare Task Force, and other commissions in the town. So it's a layered process that involves inputs from all levels, and most importantly, getting people and their voices heard. We are recording this session, so that's why it's important that you all speak clearly. Sheldon, wherever he is, has a mic. Michael will have a mic, and some of it we'll try to record on paper as we discuss some of the other questions. We also intend to have these tapes that are being recorded by TV30 available here at the library for viewing. And in addition to being able to write comments if you'd like using this piece of paper or any other mode, we have a mailing address, which is the Post Office Box 493, Princeton, 08542, and an email address, and that's princetonfuture@yahoo.com. So we want you to continue to think, and those who are not here and unable to attend or won't be able to attend the next time, to remain in the discussion and use all of the modes available to you to continue valuable input. So I think that
I just want to add one more thing. Our group includes a team of professionals. Kevin Wilkes, architect, will be part of our professional team. I will try to put together stuff in a professional manner in dealing with the presentation and the translation of program into physical and social goals. Holly Nelson, landscape architect, Shirley Satterfield, historian, and Norman Marcus, zoning consultant.
And we'll also have a transportation consultant as well, who we're interested in. Okay. I think I'll start to my left with introductions. So Sheldon, if you could come over and hold the mic. You don't have to stand. I'm going to sit.
Thanks for asking me not to stand. I live on Birch Avenue, so my most recent experience is I walked here. The Walt Mikowski. And The best part of the experience were the trees, the canopy of trees from my house. Walking up here at this time of year is just absolutely delightful.
I'm Sharon McHugh. I live also at Birch Avenue near the corner of Witherspoon, and my most recent experience was today walking here, but I walk and use the Witherspoon corridor every day, a couple of times a day, going to Small World and to the library and to Writer's Block and other places in the community. I would say probably my least preferred aspect of the street is really it's at the fine grain, and it's the condition of the sidewalk.
That's a vivid recollection.
It's really hard to negotiate for people that, some elderly people or people that are infirm. It's also hard to negotiate if you're in any kind of a wheeled vehicle like bicycle, and it's very uneven. But it's a pleasant street.
That's very important to us because actually our first four maps are meant to address experiential aspects of the street. So that's where we're starting today.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Carnegie. I also live on Birch Avenue. I bicycled here. And I have walked, and one of the ideas my wife wanted to bring along was make sure we can keep it a good place for walking, and let's save the trees, not cut down trees, because the tree canopy is real important for shade in the summertime.
On your experience
Bicycling,
direct
uh,
experience.
it seemed like it was safe enough.
That was this morning.
Safe enough this morning. Traffic was light.
Traffic was light. Okay.
I also worked for the Princeton Borough Engineering Department and helped provide the maps. Another thing I think
We want to thank Chris. He was very instrumental in getting the last map that has the real facts on it, and we're going to try to use his expertise.
And one of the first maps we talked about, or we didn't talk about, was one of the things we'd like to do is put together maybe a map of what we can do now, short-term, immediate. One of the things I see is right across the street over here by the cemetery, people sitting on the ground waiting for the bus, and we could probably easily put a bus stop bench in there for people.
I'm Mildred Trotman. I live on Witherspoon Street. I walked here today, but a vivid experience is the traffic, which I experience daily, and I'd rate that at about a 5 to 6.
My name is Lois Craig. I live on Marjoram Court and John Street. I'm up and down Witherspoon Street 10, 11 times a day. I love walking in the neighborhood. The best thing about it, of all the residents that live up in this area, I can speak to them by name and they can call me by name.
I'm Mike Shine. I live on Birch Avenue. Pleasant experience was walking here with my neighbors Sharon and Walt, but we walk quite a bit. It's kind of a walking town. I would say that, to me, Witherspoon Street is a work in progress with a long way to go.
I'm late, so I'm going to pass it on.
Just answer the first one.
Oh, my name is Faye Abelson. I live in the township in Meadowbrook Drive.
My name is Michael Floyd. I actually live in Lawrenceville. I grew up on Quarry Street. I grew up on Harris Road. I was the borough's first neighborhood preservation coordinator for the John Witherspoon neighborhood. I probably spend a lot of time in the John Witherspoon neighborhood now than many people. My impressions of Witherspoon Street and probably initial of this activity is that it should be a residential street. It's been morphed over the years, what appears to be spot zoning for business and other uses. And I worry when I hear about making it viable and energetic, like it's something wrong with it. Maybe it should be downzoned. Maybe it should be made less energetic. And maybe it should be made less mixed use because it's residential primarily. And I don't hear this discussion about Wigan Street. I don't hear this discussion about Jefferson Road. And I think there's this concept of Witherspoon Street, of Witherspoon Street and the spine, and it's sort of perpetrating some illusion that you want to create.
My name is George Lamb. I live on Hodge Road, within walking distance of here. I've been living in Princeton for over 30 years, and to me, what I like about it is it's very familiar. And I think we should be careful how we mess with it in the future. In particular, I think the rights of property owners should be respected.
Hi, I'm Rick Weiss. I live in the township. I worked on Witherspoon for the last 7 years and probably spend more of my waking hours on Witherspoon than any other place. I walk to downtown every day at lunch or during the day for work, and just love the diversity of the buildings and the tree canopies and the other things that people have said about it. And I really enjoy the environment.
My name is Phyllis Suber. I live on Terhune Road, about a mile from Nassau Street. My most recent experience on Witherspoon was yesterday. I walk into town many times a week. What do I enjoy about it? I like the trees and the familiarity, because I do walk it so many times. I see people that I don't always know by name, but we see each other and say hello. I do have problems with some of the sidewalk areas, which could be in better shape. But it's a walk I enjoy doing many times a week.
Good morning. I'm Mike Suber. Live with Phyllis on Terhune Road. So we're just around the corner from Witherspoon Street, which we use, as it has been described, an essential corridor into and out of town. I do love to walk and enjoy the scenery. I agree with the gentleman here who said it's a work in progress. Parts of it are beautiful, other parts are untidy. We find that even walking today and most days, adult bicyclists are riding on the sidewalk. We need to ask ourselves why and what can we do about it? Because the bicyclists and pedestrians don't mix well. So whereas Witherspoon Street can be made pedestrian friendly without huge amount of difficulty other than investment, to make it bicycle friendly is a major challenge, one which I hope Princeton Future and the Regional Planning Board will address. Thank you.
I'm Kevin Wilkes. My last experience on Witherspoon Street was walking from Writer's Block down to Conti's, there to pizza, and walk back to Writer's Block.
Your vivid recollection?
It was awesome.
I'm Jim Floyd Jr., and I live on Quarry Street for a long time now. I walk uptown quite a bit. As people have said, the sidewalks do need repair. That's obvious in a number of areas. And I've lived there long enough to see that there are sort of too many chronically unkempt rental properties. And my speculation is some of those buildings are owned by some people who may own rental properties on Wigan Street, and those properties don't look the same as some of the properties right around the corner from me. One wonders.
My last experience on Witherspoon Street was right now, discussing Witherspoon Street.
Joanna Kendick, I live on John Street. This morning I walked, which is my preferred way to get around anywhere. However, the real experience was yesterday afternoon when I was running errands all over the town, east, west, north, south. And of course that was by car, right between 3 and 4. So I experienced what we try, I think, to ignore. Witherspoon is very busy car street, and unless we put gates at both ends, it ain't gonna change. So, and the experience was neutral because after 20 years, I know roughly what's happening and how to deal with the traffic.
I'm Gene Limhoff, I live on John Street. Last experience on Witherspoon, other than walking here, was visiting someone on Witherspoon on Friday afternoon. And traffic was difficult to cross the street on foot. And it was even difficult to hold a civil conversation in front of the person's house at this moment. So I sympathize with people who live on Witherspoon. I think I agree with Michael that the problem I originally came to the idea that Witherspoon would be a mixed-use street, but I think it's too narrow for that. Really, residential is probably the correct direction.
I'm Marvin Reed. I'm a member of the Planning Board. I'm also chair of the Healthcare Task Force that's examining the hospital property on Witherspoon Street. My most recent experience was going to a meeting at Township Hall on Thursday night where we talked about that. I went to and from my house in Queenston Common, but I used very little of Witherspoon Street because I went around by way of Valley Road in order to avoid coming through the downtown area.
I'm Martha Strunsky, in Shirley Court. I walked from the campus last night. It was a lovely experience, even though it was raining. And I always, when it's night, I often worry about the safety of the pedestrian crossings on Witherspoon. I wear black a lot, and I always think I'm invisible. The lighting is problematic lighting. Of course, there's always the problem with repairing the sidewalks. But I hope we all notice that the trees are so valuable. I know they're problematic. There are always the tree people and the anti-tree people who talk about the leaves and roots. But maybe you might want to recall this. Well, I always think about, for example, as I go past the corner at the cemetery, I always salute the old elm. And this is its last year. It's put out its last leaf over the hundreds of years it's been there.
I'm Wanda Gunning. I'm on the Regional Planning Board. I live on Mercer Street, and I walk to the Planning Board office and back from it at least 3 times a week. I have to admit, most of the time I think about the planning problems at Witherspoon Street when I'm going up and down. And I also enjoy the historic buildings. It's something that I've been interested in a long time. And sad to say that demolition by neglect seems to be something that's creeping in this neighborhood in a lot of places. They're wonderfully kept properties, and they're very poorly kept properties. And it worries me because the rate of attrition is increasing, and as people buy them, they're torn down, they're replaced by other buildings, and the familiar sense of neighborhood is eroded.
I'm Barry Royce. I live on Harriet Drive at the other end of town, but I started off my family experience living in the Stanworth area, and Witherspoon Street at that time was a way of getting to the university, and I enjoyed walking along it a lot, and I think it's a valuable pathway between the university, the township, and so on. I guess the last time I used Witherspoon Street was yesterday. I entered Princeton from 206, coming down from the north, and drove down it at about 11 o'clock in the morning. It was remarkably traffic-free. And I turned into the parking lot by the library, picked up 2 DVDs, and rushed them. For my sins, I'm a member of the healthcare task force, so I'm particularly concerned about the hospital part of the street and what either will happen if the hospital stays or if the hospital moves. And the other official thing that I do is I'm chair of the Borough Zoning Board, and so people who want to make spot changes tend to come and make requests to us. And so I think knowing what the community thinks is a valuable input to that thinking.
I'm Susan Hockaday. I live in the borough. I've been using and shopping on Witherspoon Street for 40 years now. The most recent experience was coming in a couple of days ago from where I live over near the university and doing errands. And I realized that the upper part of the street is almost a random indigenous collection of all different kinds of buildings, some quite pretentious, some incredibly humble, and very, very humble.
When you say upper, what part of the street are you
Oh, I'm talking about sort of from the library up towards Nassau Street, sort of where most of the concentration of shops are. There's something very comfortable about a street that you know like an old suit of clothes. The parts of it are not entirely pleasant. They're a little bit rough around the edges, but they're your rough around the edges old buildings. And I really enjoy that experience. I like moving around from spot to spot, recognizing things and seeing some things that I hadn't noticed before. And the sense that I can be really actually very efficient. Come in, whiz around, and get out again.
I'm Gail Ullman, and I live on Maple Street in the borough, and I'm on the Regional Planning Board and the Environmental Commission. I actually am one of those people who drive down Witherspoon Street. I even drive down Nassau Street. And I often choose to drive down both of those streets because you can't go very fast and you can really look around. And I really enjoy that, although I realize I'm polluting the atmosphere and making it difficult for other people. I'm on Witherspoon Street at one end or the other, up and down, many times during the week. I find I guess there are 2 things I'd add to many of the things they said. I'm fond of the cemetery. I have a lot of friends in there, and I probably will have more as time goes on. And it makes me feel good to walk by the cemetery and know that I have people there. Just as Nassau Street seems to be the area of town that draws outsiders to the town, Witherspoon Street seems to me to be, to elaborate perhaps on what Susan was saying, our street. Almost all of us have to be there several times a week for one reason or another if we don't actually live there. And it does seem to me to be historically, culturally, geographically the heart of the town. And I think it's an extraordinarily important task that we're undertaking here.
My name is Wendy Nager. I live on Cherry Valley Road and have since 1980, so Witherspoon Street has always been my way of coming into town. I really like it. I like a lot of the factors that people have mentioned. I like the fact that there are a lot of different things on the street. There are churches and schools and houses and the hospital. So I think it's a very interesting street, and it's beautiful because of the trees, and I would miss it. It's a very busy street, and I think a lot of the people who go by my house when they're commuting to work probably end up on Witherspoon Street. And I agree with Johanna, that's not going to change. But I would like to see us, if the hospital does move, and I think that's likely, I'd like to see us as a community do what we're talking about here and try to figure out what would be the best thing to happen then once they leave.
I'm Karen Giserni. I live 2 blocks from the end of that map on the extension of Witherspoon Street, which is known in my neighborhood as Mount Lucas Road. Although I don't actually live in the neighborhood, I think of it as my neighborhood because for 25 years my family and I have used the programs at the recreation department at Community Park. My daughter's at Community Park School. I've been involved in the YWCA's program, preschool program, which is located at Valley Road. Like most of you, we use the hospital when we need to from time to time. The library weekly. I feel like this is my street, although on my end it has a different name. I think I use.
Walk from
I walked. I was just telling Mr. Floyd. I have estimated that I've walked all or part of that route 100 days this year, and I walk the entire length because my office happens to be in Nassau Hall. So I really make that whole journey on a pretty regular basis. And when I don't walk, I drive, obviously. And prior to walking here this morning, my last experience was last night in the rain at 8:15 coming from the YW to my house. And I agree that the pedestrians, I worry as a driver and as a walker that the pedestrians are often invisible on the street at night. And during the day, we seem quite obvious and lively. But between the rain and the potholes and the dark and the street lighting, I would say my experience last night was quite negative, although my experience this morning was just brilliant.
Thank you. I'm Jim Floyd, and I have to say senior because Jim said junior. Quite frankly, I'm quite proud of my 2 sons because they have expressed just about everything that I would like to say. With one exception, I have a few years on them in Princeton. I used to, I guess for about 30 years, I walked Witherspoon Street every day. I didn't have a car. I walked. I don't walk Witherspoon Street that often now, but I'm on Witherspoon Street every day, including Sunday, because Witherspoon Street also houses the Witherspoon Street Presbyterian Church, of which I am an elder and clerk of session. And if for no other reason, I have this continuing concern about Witherspoon Street. There are a few people in here who've been in Princeton much longer than I have and have seen the transition. And the transition has not always been in the interests of those who were the progenitors of Witherspoon Street. Many of you knew Witherspoon Street, but you flew through it as fast as you could until now. Witherspoon Street suddenly has become a street of interest to you. I hope that in the discourse, we don't disregard the history of its residents, its traditions. I hope that, as Mr. Roy says, we don't do this continuing practice of spot zoning on Witherspoon Street or any other street in town. I think that we have suddenly become a town of institutions and financial interests. I read where the big concern now is how do you get chewing gum off Nassau Street in order to attract, I guess, more stores and more people from out of town. The people who I knew and know on the Witherspoon Street spine, as Mike describes it, can't afford the prices up there anyhow. We talk about affordability. Affordability extends beyond the roof over your head. It also extends to those amenities that you once enjoyed that you no longer do. There is a reference to the hospital earlier on. Incidentally, I lived in both the borough and I currently live in the township. I served on zoning boards, planning boards in both municipalities. I have seen the transition. In fact, the Witherspoon Street corridor has been described as a neighborhood in transition. I've seen urban renewal, I've seen declarations, I've seen all of those that would either remove those folk who were there for years, and some of their descendants continue to be there. I fear the involvement of people whose primary interest is the preservation of a commercial entity to the exclusion of a residential character. I will continue to be a part of this. I do have a grave concern about the pretentiousness of those who would think and have you think theirs is one of preservation when theirs is really one of denigration. I think that has to be watched. The Declaration of Princeton's future was one of preservation of neighborhoods, and I think they become more of the perpetrator than of the preserver.
My name is Richard Casey, and I'm a resident of Jefferson Road. Jefferson Road, as you well know, is parallel to Witherspoon. When Witherspoon gets overloaded, we pick up an awful lot of the north-south, south-north traffic. I'm also a friend of Green Street, where I've had the acquaintance for almost 2 or 3 decades. I've been acquainted with the Princeton area since 1943, when Uncle Sammy sent me here. I came back in '46, and I've been living in the area ever since. I was a resident of Kingston for about 20 years or so, and then I came back onto Jefferson Road, where I married a girl who lived here all her life. I am particularly interested in neighborhood preservation. The master plan makes several provisions which indicate to me that neighborhood preservation is supposed to be a major objective. I live in the dream that one day the powers to be, the members of the boards, will read that master plan and follow it.
My name is Hans Wierzinski. I'm a resident of the township. We live in Glen. I've been living there off mountain. I've been living there for 19 years now. I try to avoid Witherspoon because of the traffic and the congestion, and the places where I want to go, like the Y and the library and the shopping center and the university, I can reach in other ways. Been using Witherspoon only for walking between the library and the and of course in summer, the upper or lower end, whichever way you want to call it, at the pool. My most recent experience, though, was 2 weeks ago. We had a long flight back from Europe. We knew that our daughter-in-law was highly pregnant. However, when we arrived, we found a message on the phone, come on over and meet your new grandson. So we rushed to the hospital, and that was actually a very, very pleasant experience.
My name is Lucy McKenzie. I live in Franklin, I think I'm influenced by the fact that I grew up on a in the Texas-Mexican border in a town of 3,000 people. So Princeton seems quite princely to me. I use Witherspoon to walk up and down for particular reasons. I go to the hospital once a month and generally will stroll down Witherspoon Street to town. I like Witherspoon Street. I'm certainly very pleased to see that it loses the character that it has now. I often go off on side streets because I also enjoy walking on those places. Most of which I think are quite well reserved, yeah. Very good shape. So I came here to see what other people felt, and this is an interesting conversation. I hope that we're very careful in what we do and what we recommend. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chuck Alden. My first experience with Witherspoon Street was when I was born in Princeton Hospital. And my most recent was when I walked from Monument Park down Nassau and then down Witherspoon to come to this meeting. In between those two events, I had my first professional job working for the township engineer. And I graduated with Marvin Trotman from Princeton High School in 1956. Since then, I've lived for a time in Europe and in Boston, Massachusetts, and then for some 23 years in Miami, Florida. I'm a landscape architect and urban designer, a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. When I chose to retire, when I decided to retire, the place that I selected, I was most fond of, and I thought would offer me the greatest amount of amenity and interest in my the remaining portion of my life, was Princeton. So I'm one of those guys, and I'm sure you know lots of them, who retired from Miami to Princeton. Well, obviously I'm very fond of Princeton. My mother worked on Witherspoon Street. As a kid, I on numerous occasions walked up and down Witherspoon Street, did participate in family shopping. It's one of the 2 or 3 most significant roadways, streets in Princeton. And Princeton is no longer the sleepy little town that it was when I was born here. No longer the sleepy little town that it was when I graduated from high school. So that there are serious issues here relative to population changes in lifestyle, traffic, transportation, and those kinds of things. And I think that Princeton Future is the organization with the full participation of the citizens of Princeton, the residents of Princeton, to find the best answers for those problems.
Good morning, I'm Jennifer Gotash with the Princeton Packet, and I'm here to report on the meeting.
Hi, I'm Rob Spritti. I've lived in Princeton since 1977, I guess. I walk or bike the length of Witherspoon Street twice a day, every day. I live at one end, just up Lucas on Laurel Road, and my office is on Nassau Street. And I think it's a wonderful street. I will say that it's a bit treacherous for a person on a bicycle, and I would hope that could be put into the plans, but I think it's a wonderful street, and I hope it stays that way.
I'm Barbara Lucen. I live on Van Diemen Avenue with my husband Ron, who's going to speak for both of us.
Hi, I'm Ron Lucen, and along with my lovely wife Barbara, we've been resident homeowners on Van Diemen Avenue for a quarter century, about 1/4 of the age of our house. And I'm on Witherspoon Street almost daily. Among the many things we love about Princeton is its walkability and its diversity. And I occasionally, I'm in town almost every day, but I walk sometimes the length of Witherspoon Street, usually as far as Conti's. But my most recent experience this morning, before coming to this meeting, was going over to Able Bagel and getting some real bagels as opposed to what's sold in most other places in town. And I'd say one of my major concerns is the, given all the economic pressures, social pressures, et cetera, pushing for a lot of changes, trying to maintain the diversity, particularly of the residential neighborhoods, I think is extremely important. I think if the hospital leaves, which may be likely, and if the university takes over that property, which may be likely, and if they turn it into a residential graduate housing or whatever, that may help maintain the residential neighborhood aspects, although I'm a little concerned about how that would happen. I love the walkability of the town, as I said, and I hope we can improve some of the negative aspects that have been mentioned already regarding sidewalks and some of the less attractive buildings, but whatever. I think maintaining the viability of the town requires maintaining the diversity of the residential neighborhoods, and I think that's extremely important. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Ricardo Bruce. I live on Littwin Street, and I did have a unique experience this morning. I came out of the house, and there were no cars parked in the street. There was no traffic going north and south. No sirens, no fire trucks, no emergency vehicles. I know it's not going to last 5 minutes, maybe, but it sure was nice for that 5 minutes.
My name is Eric Craig. I live on Witherspoon Street, 173, and it's a great experience just to walk to where you want to go. And there's an awful lot of talk. I agree with the Floyds and a lot of what they say. And there's an awful lot of talk about sidewalks, about streets, about trees. Has nothing to do with redevelopment. That doesn't mean redevelopment. Redevelopment means removal. And I think that some of the owners that I have spoken to believe that any recommendations that may come from Princeton Future are not going to be in favor of the residents in town, but of retail sales and maybe more businesses going down Witherspoon Street. This is a belief some of us have, and I think we have enough retail sales down that end of town, and it needs to remain residential. And when they speak of traffic, how come no one has said anything about Byard Lane, Harrison Street, Wigan Street, other streets that is piled up with traffic? Why is all the pressure always put on Witherspoon Street? And I would recommend any owner of a home down there trying to hold on to their home. The ones that I've talked to, like I've spoken to before, do not believe any recommendations coming from this group will be in favor of residents in that neighborhood.
Good morning, I'm Minnie Craig, live on Witherspoon Street with Eric. And it was a pleasure being able to just walk up to the beautiful library. Yesterday, the experience I particularly remember was trying to get out of our driveway to pick the grandson up at Riverside School. And that is, you can really sit there for 5 minutes and waiting to pull out onto Witherspoon Street. It was a pleasure picking the grandson up at Riverside School and bringing him down Nassau Street, down Witherspoon Street, dropping him off at the library. So the other thing I want to mention is that in the summertime, you can come down or up Witherspoon Street and see us sitting out on the porch. We have a big backyard, but somehow we're drawn to the front porch to sit out there, wave to the neighbors and friends who pass by, and but we do worry about what's going to become of Witherspoon Street. What areas will be declared blighted areas?
Good morning. My name is Shirley Satterfield, and I live on Quarry Street. I lived on Old Clay Street. I lived on Birch Avenue when they were tearing down Old Clay Street and the new Clay Street, and now I live on Quarry Street. When I think of Witherspoon Street, I kind of go back because, as someone said, I'm the historian. I really am not. I just know a lot about Princeton. And I'm actually, my family is 6 generations in Princeton, so when Mr. Floyd said there are descendants who have been here, I think my family is the oldest family of anybody who's here. I remember my grandmother lived on Witherspoon Street, and she taught at the School for Colored Children. She taught Paul Robeson at that school. When I think of Witherspoon Street, I always think of the buildings, my church, and the people who live there. I remember when Witherspoon Street, the people who didn't live in the Witherspoon-Jackson area, the only time we saw them is when they came to get people who worked for them or came to the hospital. So now it has become a popular street where the buildings such as the Chinese restaurant that has been there for years and has never been repaired, but they repaired the one up on Nassau Street. And now that there's a lot of construction on Witherspoon Street, that building has been torn down. That is a historical building. If anyone knows what was there before the Chinese restaurant. So I remember Witherspoon Street fondly. I'm concerned about what is coming into Witherspoon Street. And in defense of Princeton Future, the building that is being done is not being done by Princeton Future. I think Princeton Future is trying to preserve what we have as far as our history. And if anyone remembers, it was called African Lane. It was called African Lane because that's where they put us. And now it's like they're trying to move us out. So that's what I know about Witherspoon Street.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Carroll. I live on John Street. I missed the beginning, so I'm sure a lot of you have said many of the things that I feel. I'll just talk about two things. One, I want to echo the sentiment about bicycles on Witherspoon Street because I generally bike around town. And Witherspoon is pretty dangerous. It's one of the most dangerous streets in Princeton for cyclists. And I think, with all the students that we have in this town and, people who work here and prefer to bike, that's an important issue. Also, I want to talk about the character of the neighborhood and what drew me to the neighborhood. And the Craigs mentioned that they sit on their front porch, and I think that is a key element of what drew me to this neighborhood is that people do sit on their front porches. There's life on the street. And some of it, there was a proposal by Collier who was just kind of imagining the future of Witherspoon Street in a letter to the editor or something a couple years ago. And he talked about doing away with the old houses near the Arts Council and replacing them with, presumably some modern suburban-looking apartment building or something like that. And I just thought how dreadful that would be because it would take away that life of the street that is so key to the neighborhood.
Morning. Chuck Latini. I'm a planner with the Office of Smart Growth in the Department of Community Affairs. I'm a native of Mercer County, so I'm very familiar with Princeton, but more as a visitor. I'm very fond of your community. Here today as an observer of the public planning process and to better educate myself on your issues as we talk about neighborhood stability and revitalization of this area and also potential relocation of the hospital and all the other issues that you're bringing up here today, and I hope that we were able to assist you in any way we can.
Pam Hirsch. I've spent a great deal of my life walking up and down Witherspoon Street. My kids were born on Witherspoon Street. I have worked on both ends of Witherspoon Street, and I still have, I've worked for the Packet, worked for the university, and in my job as state and local government relations person, I'm always walking back and forth to Township Hall continually. So at least 4 or 5 times a week, I'm walking. Right now I have a bad foot, so I'm limping back and forth down Witherspoon Street. And I have to say I enjoy enormously the urban and interesting is the only way I can describe it. It's a wonderful, it's not a perfect environment, but it's always interesting and always lively, and it's a very important part of Witherspoon, of Princeton. If I wanted Disney, I'd go to Disney. I'm not looking for that type of environment on Witherspoon Street. I agree, yesterday I too walked up and down Witherspoon Street in the rain. It's difficult to navigate with the condition of the sidewalks and the huge puddles, but most of the time it's a very positive experience. I like seeing the people, saying hello, and I think it's the urban diverse experience that I like the best.
Orlando Buchanan. I live on Ray Street and Birch. I live, been living in Princeton for about 3 years or so, and my wife and I have enjoyed it very much. We've taken trips to downtown very often. My wife, I believe she goes once a day. Now we have a son, and she enjoys walking up, typically through the John Street area. She doesn't like to take Witherspoon because, and I don't either, because we don't want the sidewalk condition. I echo that thought as well. But I think the John Witherspoon neighborhood is very, very nice, very diverse. We've always liked the people who live in the area. One of the things that I came across reading the Princeton packet the other day, one of the things that concerns me is that it's starting to get, I sense that it's starting to get a little bit tense. I know there have been some tensions in the past, but as it relates to Latin Americans in the area, I happen to be a Latin American, and so I feel like we're definitely underrepresented here, even though there's a population here that's Latin American. So I think we ought to have some concern to that aspect. And when we take into account the planning for Witherspoon and its future, we ought to consider not only the Witherspoon Street, but everything that's adjacent to it, meaning all the way down to John Street, and even the adjacent streets like Birch and Rays and Lee. Those are very diverse areas, and the people there are very important, like the neighborhood as well.
My name is Karen Wolfgang. I'm a junior at Princeton University in the anthropology department. I'm here mostly because I really enjoy the process of public meetings, but also because I drive Witherspoon Street one way or another 4 times a week at least. And I've noticed that the one pothole that bothered me the most got filled in recently, but there's still a lot more to deal with. So that's my major concern, but also have appreciated everything that people have said.
Are you a graduate student or undergrad?
I'm undergrad, junior.
And you drive 4 times a day up and down?
4 times a week.
4 times a week?
Yeah.
And where is this one place you're going, or?
Yeah, I drive a 10-year-old to Javelin, to the pool. Or is that Javelin? I can't even remember the
I don't know which one.
Yeah, okay. Denuncio. Yeah. There.
Hi, my name is Polly Burlingham, and I've lived in and around Princeton since 1969. I currently live on Scott Lane on the other end of Nassau Street. But when we moved here in 1969, my father was at the university, but to find a house that he could afford for 5 daughters, we had to live in West Windsor. So 20 years later, my sisters, who were considerably younger than me, when they said where they lived, they always said Princeton. And someone who was from Princeton and not West Windsor asked them, this was in California, well, where do you live? And she very flustered up and said, Witherspoon Street. That was her main impression of Princeton. And I now am very concerned with community efforts to beautify Princeton, but without trying to take away the quality of our town. And I think that Witherspoon Street is the heart of Princeton. And it's the one street in town that I come to find things that I actually can use. There's very little left on Nassau Street or Palmer Square that's offering anything that I can buy or use on a regular basis. And there's Conti's on Witherspoon Street, the hospital where my children were born. My children went to Community Park School, Small World. There's a lot of smaller stores and businesses that I want to see preserved. And I agree that we need to improve the condition of the street. We need to improve the sidewalks. Children walking to the library from the various schools need to have a safer route, and bikes really need to have a safer route. But at the same time, Witherspoon Street, as many of you just said, has a very diverse population and a real community feel. And that is why I'm here, because I don't want to see that disappear. I want to see it enhanced perhaps, but I want to see the true sense of Witherspoon Street as the heart of Princeton maintained and just improved.